Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. And if you guys haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button over there on the MHRT Network YouTube channel. And as always, make sure you follow both, or I should say all of us that are part of the Manely Broncos podcast. Make sure you follow Brandon. He's not here tonight. He's actually on a trip. I want to say it was to Chicago, I think. So wish him all the best. But we are going to make sure that we hold down the fort. So make sure you follow both Matty and I at Matty Mulls Pod, myself at Cameron Parker PO. And of course the show handle at Manely Broncos. It's exciting, Matty. It's an exciting time because, for, it feels like maybe, should we say, for the longest time, like the Broncos are basically streaking again, right? I mean, like there was the 5-game winning streak, for last year that kind of felt a little bit fluky to a certain degree, but you can't really take that 5-game winning streak away. But right now they have a really solid 3-game winning streak right now, and it is all the pistons are firing. It feels like, and it seems like specifically with that young quarterback, Nix is the fix right now, or it appears that he's growing every single game.
Bueller. He showed up. Shake it up, baby. Now shake it up, baby. 3 in a row. Like, let's freaking go. So I'm celebrating with a little apple pie moonshine celebratory shot. Here we go.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, man. And I think that, one of the things that, we were kind of touching on specifically with, this young football team, Matty, was they needed to start off early. You know what I mean? Like they really needed to start off, kind of hot to begin the season a little bit. And, they started a bit rough there, in the beginning, facing the Seattle Seahawks and then, at home with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they rolled off 3 straight, and they beat 2 playoff teams, arguably, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or I should say maybe not so playoff teams by the looks of it with, what's going on, down there on the East Coast. But I just think that overall, like, you have to be overly encouraged with what you've seen from the team side of things within this 3-game winning streak. And why don't we just lead it off with, with you, Matty, and for everybody that is in the chat, feel free to chime in. You guys can comment, through X and through Twitter, now. But let's start with you, Matty. What has been the most impressive part of it for you with this 3-game winning streak?
I mean, the straw that stirs the drink is definitely the defense. In this game, on a 2nd and 5 at the Denver 13, Gardner Minshew passed short left to Bowers to Denver 5 for 8 yards. And after that, Las Vegas had an 80.4% chance to win the game. The very next play, we ended up getting that interception and running it back for a touchdown. And that was all she wrote. That flipped the script. And the key for us is obviously being able to generate things defensively. Our special teams has also contributed, pinning teams deep to allow our defense to be aggressive. And then our offense of late has not made crucial mistake after crucial mistake after crucial mistake. So very complimentary football that starts with the defense. And a lot of people, myself included, were down on what our projection looked like defensively. Now, defensive line, we knew we had some guys. We obviously knew what PS2 was, but there are a lot of question marks. There are a lot of question marks on this defense. Some people ranked it number 32 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like, well, this is a top 5 defense. This defense
Right.
is legit. Kay Adams is talking about Broncos making the playoffs. And like how everything. I mean, Kay Adams is so great. What a great spokesman we have for Broncos country. Like national media is talking about it. We have we have a little hustle and flow action going on at the cornerback position.
Yeah.
You know, we got the flow of the PS2 and we got the hustle of the great white hype, who also follows through getting a pick. His first pick, the first pick by a white corner in 22 years in the NFL. Incredible stuff. And like this defense is just doing big things. And that's, it's really impressive to see them come together. And I got to give credit to Vance Joseph, you know, coming back to this position to be the defensive coordinator on a team in a city that you were the head coach of once before, and really humbling himself and getting after it and making this defense what it is after losing the heart and soul of the defense and Justin Simmons in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Just an incredible job all around by many guys.
Yeah. It's really hard for you when you talk about the positives of this winning streak, and you know, we're going to talk about it all. You know, well, we're obviously going to be talking about it all from, you know, their performance against the Raiders and the 3-game winning streak, and then we'll, you know, be diving in obviously into the Chargers game. But it is really hard not to start with the defense, you know, like as far as how impressive this team has been. And I think that if you kind of just peel all it back from, you know, all the impressive, just of how impressive this team has been, you really do have to start specifically with that front seven. And I mean, just overall, like, I mean, it is just, you have, I was looking at it, and Matty, maybe you were able to, you know, catch this, but, you know, when you have 2 of your defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, that are 1 and 2 respectively at their positions, who are winning at pass rush win rate between Zach Allen and Malcolm Roach, you will be winning a lot of opportunities at that line of scrimmage. And that's basically one of the key things, you know, for that team. And I mean, the running game, in the sense of the run defense, has almost been neutralized. I mean, like, obviously, you know, the Raiders didn't exactly have Josh Jacobs, but the way that they even had that game, and the way that the Raiders even played that game, and the way that the Broncos, you know, played that game, you know, just stifling the run, right after that, you know, Pat Surtain pick 6, like, it just seems like that has been their enforcer, right? Like that is the one that is just really such a, it just has set the tone for the entire game whenever they're just able to really neutralize it from those trenches, you know, guys from that pass rush to even the interior. Like, I mean, like, and I, you know, and I think that so much, Matty, of it has caused it to where, you know, one of my predictions kind of came true. I think it was actually even on the 5280 podcast. I said that the Broncos will force the Raiders to play both quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and both of them played. And I don't think that's going to be the first time we see something like that happen against this Broncos defense. Might actually end up being the case when they play the New Orleans Saints in the Sean Payton Bowl here in a week. But yeah, all in all, very, very impressive performance. And shout out to Moose River Hummer. I want to touch on this, Matty. This was It's a really good question. Obviously, we have to give kudos to Vance Joseph. But how much impact do you think Jim Leonard made to this entire growth and development of the defense, or I should say specifically of the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, big time on the secondary, right? I think he's gotten free reign to do whatever he needs to do. And
Really good question.
Joseph's been dialing up things overall to put guys in the right position. I don't know how much impact Leonard's had on the front seven. And I think the question's important because a lot of people assume, given the team's performance on the defensive side, if it continues, then Vance Joseph's going to be having the time of his life in a city not named Denver. And he'll get another head coaching gig. So that's important to think about continuity and who's the next man up. And it certainly seems like Jim Leonard would be that guy. I can't speak to the front seven at all, but the whole defense is playing well. It's playing complementary. The pass rush getting there to help alleviate things from the secondary being where they have to be, coverage sacks and guys getting home, guys hitting their run fits well, guys coming into the box and coming on blitzes like that lock blitz against Rodgers 2 weeks ago, just to help ice that game. Just it's really good to see every level playing complementary football and doing their jobs, and for the most part, not busting coverage. There was the one play to Brock Bowers to start the game off, and it was like, okay, here we go. But just like Ferris Bueller, the defense was playing sick, but it wasn't actually sick, and then it went in and just had a day on itself. So, it didn't quite joyride the Ferrari, but it might as well have. It's a good question. It's something to monitor, and I really hope that somebody asks specifically about Jim Leonard and his impact, maybe around the bye week if we're able to get some of that additional media coverage there to dig in on some of those secondary and third level effects storylines. That's a great question.
Yeah, and I think where you do see it at least right initially with the yin and the yang of this defense is, one of the things that we touched on, Matty, when Leonard was hired was his aggressive nature. When he was with Wisconsin and his coaching style, even from the defensive side of things, he's a very, very aggressive minded coach. And specifically from the secondary, and with what you're seeing in the first handful of weeks of the regular season, that it's not missed a step. I mean, the secondary is well involved, with this aggressive style, and I think that one thing that has been so beneficial. And everybody knows I'm a big Justin Simmons fan. Everybody can see the Justin Simmons jersey behind me. But I think that one of the things that has been very underrated in the sense, and I did mention it, but was the fact that Brandon Jones was brought in and already had a previous playing relationship with PJ Locke dating back to Texas. So it wasn't like he was truly, truly, truly going into a very, new situation, where he kind of really had to establish the relationship with, his players, which, I mean, you do have to do that. But I mean, specifically, like sometimes it really helps in your growth and your development when you have a lot of people that you are rather familiar with, on that side of the ball, or specifically in a football team, for you to grow as a player, and specifically from the coaching side of things, for them to get the best out of you. And so I think that, one of the things that I have to ask you specifically, Matty, I don't know how much of him specifically you knew about him when he was a coach there. But I think that the other area that I think is, so underrated, and specifically from the coaching side of things, as we're talking about the coaches, is Jamar Cain. Jamar Cain, specifically when he was at Oklahoma, was there something like that you kind of saw, or that maybe some of the coaching staff saw just a little bit with him when he was at Oklahoma, like in terms of him being maybe to the same degree, like this aggressive style a little bit?
Well, first of all, this is going to sound a little cliche given our defensive coordinator, but he's a leader of men. He was a defensive guy, edge, backers, D-line. He kind of touched on all of that for sure. But he was known as a heavy recruiter. You can go look at his record. He was also a guy who helped to bring offensive talent to Oklahoma. He carries a lot of weight. He's a very magnetic figure in the locker room. He's a uniter of people. He's one of those, I call them force multipliers, where you just bring somebody like that into an organization and they make everybody stronger. Nick Benito certainly is benefiting from some of that tutelage. I don't think it's any coincidence that Benito is having success
With a former coach
and starting to flourish there, but also the other guys are really stepping up and performing well. Cooper and Allen and all those guys are doing work. So Kane is actually, he's another one. Maybe at some point, Vance moves on. Leonard moves up into that role because we all expect that to happen if he stays and doesn't leave. And then maybe Kane starts getting maybe assistant defensive coordinator type of title and starting to work into that role. So very exciting. I'm not surprised at it, but I was surprised that we had the foresight to go out and snag him because he was very much in demand at the collegiate ranks.
On both sides, actually. I mean, Jim Leonard and Jamar Kane. I mean, obviously, Leonard was a little bit more than the college ranks. I mean, he was getting defensive coordinator interviews in the NFL, and I mean, my dad and I will definitely tell you that we certainly wish that he would have been. Or I should not say wish, but we all thought that he was going to end up being the head coach of Wisconsin. And it was a bit kind of shady necessarily with how all of that went down. That's a story for another day with how they went out and kind of hired Fickle, if you will. But moving on, as we move forward from, what we should say, like the more positive, starting with the biggest positives, I should say, of the this team being the defensive side of the ball. The offense, it's taken some time to gel. It's taken some time to gel a little bit, Matty. We'll end obviously with the quarterback position in Bo Nix, but I think that the one thing we can probably start with first from the offensive side of thing, and specifically within this 3-game winning streak, is that you're starting to see strides. Will it continue? We don't know. But you're starting to see the strides we've been wanting to see from Javonte Williams. At the beginning part of the season, he was he wasn't exactly himself. I mean, against the Seahawks, against the Steelers, even at times, against Tampa, he wasn't exactly himself. But you started to see some of the signs, like a run here and there against Tampa, but it was the Jets game in the rain. And then obviously this game against the Vegas Raiders where, Matty, it was like, you hopped back into the DeLorean and, and Javonte Williams was himself from his rookie year. I mean, we're talking, what was the statistic that I found, Matty, and I tweeted it before the show, but 46 of his 61 yards rushing were yards after contact. And I think he had 13 missed tackles. Jordan Lopez, friend of the show, co-host of Broncos Av, also tweeted that 13 missed tackles. Like, you're starting to kind of see a trend now where Javonte might be starting to get his feet wet now and being more comfortable week by week. And Matty, that has got to be a really darn good feeling for Javonte, and specifically knowing the fact we might be getting Estime back on Sunday.
Boom, 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 boom. pow, 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 pow. Like it's not gonna stop. We really have Javonte doing work in the running game, also contributed quite a bit in the passing game too. And Jaleel McLaughlin, it seems like every week is just making a highlight touchdown down around the goal line, scoring a touchdown he had no business scoring. And now we're going to be bringing back Estime, which is another guy that we can bring into the fold to help pound the defense into submission. A strong running game, a physical running game, a willing running game is only going to open things up for Knicks downfield.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to open up the play action. It's going to split the defense in half. It's going to make the numbers game matter. It's going to help us make the right decisions and put guys.
It's even going to help
position.
his running game too.
Yeah, I mean, if those ends are going to be in hell when they get in short yardage situations, especially if we're getting into that second level pretty easily. And we're finishing runs off by getting yards after contact. Maybe they crash down more. And then you have the show and go game with putting the ball in Javonte's belly and then pulling it back and taking off around the corner for Knicks. His running game is certainly a weapon. It's something we haven't really had here in a while.
Really since Tebow.
Yeah, and he doesn't. I appreciate the fact that like he's willing if he has to do something physical, but he's smart about not taking unnecessary hits.
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of young guys who are trying to make a name for themselves in this league get the hell down, and I'm glad that he gets the hell down or gets out of bounds, and he's not running around getting lit up. He's got the frame to be able to sustain some of that, but I would certainly like him not to show us that. Right. Yeah. Nobody's questioning his toughness. You don't need to do it. We believe either way. Just protect yourself, bro. But it's important. The complementary football, playing solid defense, and then running the football and protecting the quarterback and hitting explosives and making the defense decide, do we play too high or do we bring an extra safety into the box, and then maybe
too high doesn't exist anymore, Matty. I mean, too high doesn't.
It's been pretty prevalent across the entire NFL. That in cover 3, although the Jaguars torched that last week. Yeah, I mean, it gives us versatility. I think it's great for us to be able to have all 3 backs that can take some of the load and get anywhere from 5 to 12 plus carries a game. That's huge.
Yeah. It is. And I think that there will be a point where I think the wide receiver room gets going maybe just a little bit. But I think that, there will be a conversation where, you might have a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. You know what I mean? But I think that what you are seeing is you're just seeing a lot of, players being, thrown in there. I mean, and it's one of the reasons why you're starting to see maybe Franklin get a little bit involved, Marvin Mims get a little bit involved, and Cortland Sutton and, Josh Reynolds and obviously little Jordan Humphrey. So, and on Sunday, I thought that, given the fact that, there may not necessarily be a household name at wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 1 with this Broncos receiving core, which is a big problem. And we will touch on that here in just a little bit. They are doing a really good job. Knicks and Davis Webb and Sean Payton, specifically Pete Carmichael, are doing a really good job of spreading, allowing Knicks to spread the ball around. What was it? 11 targets that he was able to hit, on Sunday against the Raiders. I mean, that is a statistic that I don't think Bronco fans, like it really didn't resonate with them too much, because like that is a stat that, Matty, we've not had since really Peyton Manning. I mean, for them to distribute it to that many targets, to that many weapons. And so I think that, it's a gratifying feeling that, we may not have a wide receiver 1, a pure wide receiver 1, but the offense and with what we're able to do and operate with, it's still feeding a lot of those weapons.
I mean, it wasn't pretty in the past game, but hitting all those targets, it's just pretty insane that if I said, hey, I'll give you Lil Jordan Humphrey, Cortland Sutton, and Troy Franklin, or name any other wide receiver or tight end on the roster outside of Franklin, combine them, and I will tell you that they do not lead the team in receptions. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 2 receptions. Sutton, 2 receptions. A lot of guys with 1. McLaughlin with 2 or 3 receptions, excuse me. Javonte Williams, 5 catches for 50 yards. Now, granted, that 26-yarder helped, but 6 targets. So being available in the passing game, which we hadn't seen a lot of, and him doing something with it is incredible. And the well-timed running back screens and getting him out in space and being able to, fix problems when we get behind the chains. Very good play calling too. I gotta give coaches credit for that and putting Javonte in position. Javonte had 111 combined yards on 18 touches. That's pretty damn good efficiency, if you ask me.
111? Right.
111 on 18 touches.
Yep. I mean, that's really good for Javonte and his efficiency. But to kind of peel it back a little bit, and this has been, the 2 biggest negatives, for this, and that is they do lack a wide receiver 1, and obviously they lack some activity at tight end, and we need to have a conversation about Greg Dulcich and his time as a Denver Bronco. I think it's going to be ending here in the next couple of weeks, if not the next week, or hours, or days, I should say, even. But Lucas Kroll doesn't seem to be as very effective. Their best tight end on this roster right now, given with where things are at, is Adam Troutman. And Donald Parham, they haven't seen him yet. Maybe that's going to end up being this upcoming weekend. I don't know. But the tight end position, and specifically having a dominant wide receiver 1, Matty, has definitely been the weakest point of this team.
Yeah, and big time. It's been the weak link for quite a while. That's going to be another element that we add. I think at some point, I don't know if it's going to be trade deadline or whatever this year, but we're not moving forward with our tight end room looking anything like this next season.
Yeah.
We're certainly going to do something. I don't know who that player will be, but we're going to add some type of receiving element to this offense. I think you could see 3 or 4 potentially skill position players added who will get solid burn next season.
And I think that, it's one of the reasons why I think the first move that they make is they actually address the tight end position. Is that they actually, meaning
do they do that this trade deadline?
They could, and I think that obviously that's going to be a separate conversation as soon as we preview the Chargers game here in a little bit, because that's a separate conversation after that. Is they've got a pretty decent window, obviously given the Derek Carr injury now, where they are at the very least likely to go. What is it? 2-1, right? Maybe even 3-0, given this stretch.
We could be 6-2 going into Kansas City or Baltimore. I don't remember.
I think it's Baltimore, but so that we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But I think that that it's a conversation, and I think that they'll probably first start with their in-house candidates, and start with Parham, and and maybe go from there a little bit. I at least would hope. And if not, then it kind of goes to show you maybe they really kind of missed it a little bit. But yeah, I'm definitely, I'm still very encouraged though. Let me just kind of say that I'm definitely encouraged in the fact that despite the miscomings of no tight end production, Matty, and no dominant wide receiver one, the Broncos are doing enough offensively and schematically uh, to win a lot of football games right now in this 3-game winning streak. And I should say, by convincing fashion. I mean, obviously there was the really gritty game and, weather riddled game a little bit against the Jets, but Tampa, they really showed that they can play really good defense and really good complementary offense to where they can be able to win a lot of games. That type of chemistry, just given as an offense, can win you a lot of games when you do neutralize a lot of your opportunities in terms of turnovers and sacks that you allow, I should say.
Prevent negative plays, right? Bo Nix, he was sacked 3 times. So back-to-back games without allowing a sack, and then he was sacked 3 times. But a guy by the name of Maximum Crosby, man, that dude is just so good. He's a thorn in our side every freaking game that we play them. He's just good at football. He's good at what he does. So you would expect that to happen. Christian Wilkins got the other sack, and now he is out for the foreseeable future. So that's a huge loss for them. But yeah, their studs did stud things and got sacks and made plays, but didn't derail Bo's overall game. So that's important. But again, not taking negative plays routinely. Russell Wilson was notorious for not playing in structure and then putting the offensive line in bad positions and then taking sacks. Bo Nix has not done a lot of that. I think some of his mobility has helped, but for the most part, it's been pretty clean. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, special teams really helping to flip fields, put the other offense in a bind, have to play a certain way because they're put up against their goal line. Almost got our 3rd safety of the season.
Probably could have been.
I still think, okay, so let me go on a slight rant as if I do anything else, right? I always go on some type of rant, but in order to not be like, if any part of the quarterback's body is behind the line of scrimmage when he throws the football, he is not past the line of scrimmage. If his foot is still back behind the line of scrimmage, he could throw the ball 80 yards and it's fine, right? He's considered to be behind the line, right? So in that case, if a quarterback is not fully beyond the goal line and throws the ball away in a grounding scenario, how is it that the NFL says he's behind the line here, but he's beyond the line there based on where you're at on the field? That doesn't make sense to me. Nobody has said anything about it. I haven't heard it all week. Nobody's brought this up, but I think like that's pretty dumb, honestly. You're benefiting the quarterback twice there. And I really think that there's some shenanigans afoot with that.
And last I checked, if a penalty happens in the end zone, regardless of what it is a holding penalty,
grounding, whatever,
grounding, it's a safety. Last I checked, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Let's touch on Bo Nix here. Just
God bless Bo Nix.
God bless Bo Nix, right? Thank you, Tony Scheffler, Broncos legend Tony Scheffler, for the for the clip that will be cycled and over and over from draft night. So thank you. We actually might, you know what? It is a very short clip. We need to get this on the network. We need to get this on
heck yeah. What's the question? What's
anyway,
the question about Bo?
Going over, his 3-game winning streak, and just now that we're, through 5 games, I'm very impressed with Bo, Matty. I think that, he's not necessarily taking consistent shots and being aggressive, maybe when he needs to at times. But I think you are starting from what we've seen in the first game to what we're seeing into, that fifth game. You're seeing major improvement. I mean, yeah, it was heavily criticized. It felt like on social media by some people, but the Troy Franklin play. Look, I mean, that's a touchdown. You're having a completely different conversation if that is a touchdown with, Bo Nix's stat line, and then let alone, him taking that shot down the field. And then, oh, by the way, if they do score that touchdown, the kerfuffle and stuff that happened after that does not happen because of the fact that it was it was a touchdown to Troy Franklin, and they're doing way more celebrating on the sideline than anything. And so I think that you're seeing him take a little bit more shots, specifically in this 3-game winning streak, even into the first half. And I think that hopefully that talking about this kerfuffle, you do see more signs of him being a little bit more aggressive. And I think we saw that after that moment where you saw some opportunities where I think specifically in the Josh Reynolds touchdown, he had a wide receiver just a little bit underneath that he probably could have hit. And instead he layered a throw nicely and beautifully, to Reynolds in the corner of the end zone. And it was a beautiful play. And I think that, those are the types of plays that are just elite quarterback throws. It doesn't matter if you have a great arm or a bad arm. If you're able to lead a wide receiver to their points and to their spots, you're going to still win a lot of football games and score a lot of touchdowns. And that's exactly what Bo Nix did. And, so I think the confidence from this young kid, Matty, is growing and growing by the day and by the game.
But that doesn't fit the Denver media narrative. He's supposed to be an unconfident guy, right?
Or what I was gonna say, it'll be interesting. Did they even ask him? Did they even ask Sean today about his confidence?
I don't know. I guess Bo had a lot of dinners with media people this week. I got to say this about Mr. Nix's play. Next summer, there are going to be a lot of babies born named Bo in the city of Denver. So he's doing enough to make guys on the team believe. I don't see, as of now, granted winning makes things a lot nicer. I don't see the defense throwing him under the bus or having any type of tantrums or anything like that. Like, let's take a step back, and I'm just as critical as anyone else. I'm not saying that I'm, the greatest thing since sliced bread, because sliced bread's pretty dope. But his first game was on the road at Seattle. That's one of the most hostile environments in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Granted, the defense did freaking everything they could in that game to keep Seattle bottled up. But Seattle's got a pretty good offense, turns out. And their defense doesn't suck either. So losing 26-20 with a chance maybe to get the ball back, and who knows what would have happened. Taking that one kind of down to the wire with the way that things were. Not terrible. Turns out Pittsburgh, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Go figure. Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Losing 13-6. Was the game ugly at home? Absolutely, it was ugly. It was ugly on the defense too, even though they only gave up 13 points. They couldn't get off the field when they needed to. The whole team was just out of rhythm that game. Tampa Bay was, in people's power rankings, top 5 going into that game. They only score 7. We score 26. The Jet game on the road, again, our third game out of 4.
Ugly field and
horrible conditions with a Hall of Fame quarterback that spent his entire career playing in horrible conditions. Also had a rough game. We win 10-9, but 3 of our first 4 games were on the road. And so you could say, okay, in our 3-game win streak, you take away the horrible element game, we scored 26 points and 34 points. Yeah. As a team, right? Obviously that pick 6 helped a little bit, but we're in the 20s on offense both games, and that's That's pretty spectacular.
It's
I think
actually
the Chiefs are only averaging what, like 22 points per game or something right now.
it's actually 27 points specifically with that Raiders game if you take away the pick six, but it's also, what is it, 34 straight points even after the, or like after, the Raiders went up 10-0. So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot to like about the trajectory of our offense. Bo Nix helps a lot of that work. That's not to say that Zach Wilson couldn't come in and have success, or Jarrett Stidham couldn't come in and have success, but Bo Nix, like just with his moxie and his athletic ability to get out of trouble and scramble, Vanilla Vic has got it going on.
yeah, I mean, he's just playing well. And I think that, to your point that when we were talking about the running game, I think that what makes this a little bit deadly to begin a career, and I mean this positively, specifically with Bo Nix, is that he can run the ball. And it was pretty evident that he can run the ball, in this 3-game winning streak, but he makes it a priority not to run the ball. He's a pass first quarterback. And I think that, that's really important that we preface it that way. So I think that it's really impressive that you have a quarterback who's unselfish like that, who's a true quarterback, like to use the phrase, like, the distributing of the football. And so I think that, that's a good combination to have, at least, in the first 5 weeks of the season, because once he hits that comfortability and he's able to, be comfortable, and, once he's deciphered defense and really has seen it all, at that moment, I think you will start to see him be a little bit more comfortable using his legs a little bit more on scrambles, to where you actually get a chance to see maybe just a little bit more of what we saw in that Tampa Bay game, which was an unbelievable sense and feel of, the backside, pressure, or blindside pressure, if you will, where he, runs for about 20 yards. And so I think you will see a little bit more of that, once he continues to grow and become a really good passer and runner of the football. Moving forward with the Chargers game, Jeff Bryan mentions, I fear Herbert is going to go off. Our defense is, due for a lockdown game. If that happens, our run game isn't going to matter. The Bolts have also had 2 weeks to prepare. And I think that, we should put the emphasis on the 2 weeks to prepare, because the Chargers have had 2 weeks to prepare. And also, given the 2 weeks of preparation, Matty is also allowing maybe some of their players to get healthy. Specifically, I think Slater might actually end up coming back. I don't know about Joe Alt. Khalil Mack seems to be playing in the trend to play. Doesn't seem right now, that Joey Bosa may play, but I mean, he's been on and off again in terms of, his play time. Was a member of the Chargers anyway. I think that this is I don't want to get too carried away with this, Matty, because but I do agree. Like I do agree in the sense that, like, the defense is coming to a point where a letdown will happen, and can the offense do enough to basically win a shootout? I think that's going to end up being the question. But the reason why I say that is because, and preface it this way, is because the wide receiving room that the Chargers have, the Broncos can't get so overconfident, with everything that they've been playing, that they forget about guys like a Joshua Palmer, maybe even a Brendan Rice, if he's able to, contribute here and there. Obviously, so I think that just the offensive weapons that they have and the Chargers have, they're not great. Like, they are not great weapons. And I think that, it's just, it's to a point where you don't want to get lost if you're a secondary. You want to continue to momentum. You want to continue the ride and what you're on. and just trust the fact that this is your opponent week in and week out, and don't, lose your habits.
So there's a lot to digest here since we're moving on to the Chargers game. Vegas has them at a -3 right now. They opened at -2.5. So that basically means that Vegas or the public combined think that they are 6 points better than the Broncos because the Broncos are at home. Home team gets gifted 3 points right off the bat. Okay. That being said, the defense is solid, but the defense has issues. Let's go. Let's talk about that injury status real quick. Joseph Taylor did not practice on Wednesday. Dean Leonard, hamstring, listed as did not practice. Alt was limited. Slater was questionable. Nothing about his practice stuff today. Sticking with the defense, we have Joey Bosa, did not practice because of the hip. That's huge here, right? Christian Fulton, knee, did not participate. Like all those guys that I mentioned were questionable, didn't participate today. Maybe like on Thursday, if they're a DMP also,
Friday.
that's going to be pretty indicative of what their overall status is going to be. Like this team is banged up even coming off of the bye week, and Herbert with the ankle, like he's a gamer, he's going to play through it. He's not going to scramble a lot. I know that much. He's going to have to, boom, boom out or boom, 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 boom out. Like he's going to have to be on time, on target. It's not going to be any of this improvisation stuff. Gus Edwards did not practice Wednesday. That's one more running back that's out. That's more pressure that they're going to put on Dobbins, or maybe they bring Vidal in as like a, I don't want to say a change of pace because Dobbins is pretty electric in the open field, but that's a lot of pressure on a running game with 2 hurt tackles. And
Dobbins, who's got injury history,
and a defense that's banged up too. So it's very interesting what their formula is going to be. We know Harbaugh is going to want to run the football, but the success rate, like that's not where they're going to have success. I mean, the Broncos aren't facilitating a lot of receiving to running backs. They are pushing running backs to they are pushing some targets to running backs to get them involved. But overall, running backs have been pretty well contained from that Broncos defense. And there hasn't, outside of Tampa maybe, game script hasn't really gone crazy, at least to start games. So teams have been able to keep the running game a focus, and then it just hasn't been effective. Where they could potentially hurt us if they had anybody, and Hayden Hurst was limited, was tight end. They're using the tight end more for the Chargers. The Broncos are forcing the tight end to be the emphasis, and just schematically that's what's open. But I don't know that the Chargers have what it could take to punish the Broncos at the tight end position. You saw what happened. Bowers went off early, and then he went quiet, and so that's important to note. I think the Broncos we're going to start, and if you can't get it to the tight end, then that's going to be a long, long day for you. You got to hit the tight end early to force some other things open, run the ball well, and then maybe you can beat us deep. I don't think that their receivers have any type of benefit on us unless you're going to hit maybe Palmer deep, or they let Johnston get loose. But honestly, I know white corner, white receiver, people want to see white on white all day. But honestly, I think I would put PS2 on McConkey, and I would put Riley Moss on Johnston. That's just me if I was going straight up. There are avenues for us to be able to shut this offense down, and Vegas doesn't see a lot of points being scored in this game anyway. It's been bet down from 36.5 all the way down to 35.5. So it's Mike, yeah. This is going to be another slugfest. It'll be a rock fight, but the Broncos are used to playing this way now. And so I got to give the edge to them at altitude with the crowd behind them. Their fits aren't going to be as beautiful as last week, but the Orange Crush is still going to be alive and well.
And it'll be interesting to see what jerseys I think that they'll wear. I haven't. I don't think they released what they're going to be wearing, but who knows? They might bring out they might actually bring out, what is it, the sunset orange with the blue pants and the blue helmet. That would be.
Let's go UTEP.
But we all know that they're a better football team than UTEP. But so I think the one thing too from the Broncos side of things going up against the Chargers defense is the Chargers. I think they are a top 5 rush defense. So that is one area where it doesn't matter if you are talking about it with some of the top run defenses between the Chargers and the Broncos. The Broncos still, like the Chargers, we're probably going to have an emphasis on running the football. And I think that it does matter that, given where Javonte Williams is that he looks to be on a much higher, clip right now. The vision is probably the biggest thing, is that he's, the vision is night and day better than what it had been in the weeks prior. I mean, he's not talking to himself near a brick wall anymore. Like, he's actually talking to people. Like, he's actually like, seeing a lot of open space and, a lot of open green grass. And I think that, he's really starting to kind of get, in that mold. And I think that, for Bo, I think specifically from the quarterback position and specifically from, making sure that he's, looking off safeties and doing the reads that he needs to, it's usually where you also want to make sure that there's, where that certain safety is. And that's going to end up being Derwin James. Derwin James could end up being one of those players that, he's been kind of banged up in overall in his career, but he's still a pretty darn good safety. And, so Nix has got to be, on guard a little bit in terms of, and be careful that, he doesn't, get lost at times, because Derwin James can make you pay at them, even in the middle part of the field, or even, in the box or whatever. So, I mean, like, Derwin James, I feel like might actually be the X factor of this game from the defensive side of things for the Chargers.
Hunter, well, especially if Bosa doesn't play, right? Nix is going to have to certainly negotiate James with his eyes, and they're going to have to draw some things up schematically to be able to put him in the wrong position. But he's still so good that he could be right even when he's wrong, type of thing. Ed Reed made a whole career off of just that. Where this game is going to be, one, feels like it's going to be in the trenches, talking about the running game. I'm very concerned about our offensive line health. High ankle sprain from Alex. Is it Pawchewski? Is that how you?
I think it's Pawchewski, yeah.
So sorry, I butchered your name. You can take it out on me if you ever meet me in person. That's fine. Wattenberg, questionable. That's going to be a thing too.
And it sounds like, according to Mike Kliss, that we are going to be getting a reunion between center and quarterback.
Forsyth, may the Forsyth be with us.
May the Forsyth be with us.
Okay. Franklin Myers, keeping in the trenches. Don't know what his status is going to be. It does seem like Zach Allen is going to be back. He just had a day of rest. So we're not perfectly clean. There are a couple of spots that could be issues for us, especially if we have to play against Bosa. So something to keep in mind for us there.
And Garrett Bowles too. I mean, like, Garrett Bowles, went out. He came back and obviously finished the game, but you don't want anything to happen there either.
He's not showing up on the injury report right now. That doesn't mean that he couldn't, aggravate something, or something happens through the course of the next couple of days here on Thursday and Friday practice. But so far, at least that's good. We really got to get Alex P back in the fold.
And even Mike McGlinchey. I mean, I think Mike McGlinchey's actually eligible for next week. And I I doubt that the Broncos would want to activate him for a short week going up against the New Orleans Saints.
You activate him after that when you have like 10 days before your next game.
Yeah. So I just think that they better hope that what they did see from Matt Parrott in the second half of that game against the Raiders is a good sign of things to come. Because let's be honest, I actually think that Parrott actually played pretty well in kind of holding his own a little bit with Crosby. I mean, obviously Crosby is going to get his own, and obviously, provide some pressure. But I thought that overall he really did some good things. I mean, he was pretty impactful in the running game, sealing off some edges a little bit for Javonte, and even Jaleel, and, even too in the screen game. So I thought that Pierre did some pretty nice things. And I think that, where you might actually see some intrigue here with Peart is I wonder if maybe they see something a little bit with Cam Fleming, and to where
brought him back. Yeah.
They brought him back. And so I think that maybe it's going to be this game and then obviously the Saints game where it's going to be a trial by fire for Peart and for Fleming, that whoever's the hot hand at that tackle spot, they're probably going to end up keeping there. And if there's a handful of really bad snaps, I think you are going to end up seeing Cam Fleming, if he ends up getting activated, that he's going to probably end up getting some run. And we all know that if Bulls does have a slight misstep, due to his injury, and he needs to step away, we know that Cam Fleming at least has shown the capability to be a left tackle a little bit in a pinch and, be a replacement for Bulls. So that is certainly something to monitor there a little bit too. So, and then at least I think if you're at least given that opportunity, you can at least use Frank Crum as your eligible blocker on, big, heavy sets and stuff like that, either in the goal line or, short yardage situations. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate thing to, work with, but it seems like the Broncos, and at least specifically under Zach Strief, they are doing pretty good right now with what they have versus with their tackle depth.
And if they want to make a move, so the trade deadline is November 5th. So that puts us 2 days after our game at Baltimore. So our upcoming schedule, we play the Chargers at New Orleans on a short week. We have 10 days to prepare for Carolina at home. And then we're going to be playing at Baltimore on the 3rd of November. I think that we are firmly in the trade market come after that New Orleans game on Thursday night, a week from tomorrow, which is really crazy, right? In the next 8 days, we have 2 games, but we do that to be able to integrate them against Carolina. But I don't know that you would want to do a trade and have to integrate somebody within a couple of days to go at Kansas City. That seems like a recipe for failure, especially with our 3 toughest games. It looks like back to back to back at Baltimore, at Kansas City, and then at home against a surging Atlanta Falcons team. So over the next week and a half, we might see some fireworks and see the Broncos pull a deal.
And we'll see if maybe there's a certain player with the Falcons who's actually going to be playing with the Broncos and, maybe playing against his former team, on that day. Who knows? That's maybe wishful thinking a little bit to a degree, but
not going to happen, dude.
I know, right. But we would be remiss if we didn't get a chance to also talk about probably one of the other biggest news of the day. We touched on, obviously, Audric Estime coming back. But they added someone to the room, specifically with one that had been lacking. We mentioned Cam Fleming might be one of those guys that is an option to be a very quick activated off the practice squad and be, part of the game day, Sunday against the Chargers. There's another guy, that recently just happened here in the last 24 to 48 hours, where it seems like it could be a quick thing where maybe they activate him and he ends up being on the active roster for game day. And that is a guy by the name of A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry, he's 6'5", he's 205. He was scouted really well by Cody Rager from the New Orleans, who was a poach by the Broncos and Sean Payton, I should say specifically Payton, and brought him in. And obviously, a lot of people have felt like Rager is one of the few guys that the Broncos have now in the front office that could be a GM in waiting. So A.T. Perry is a guy that I think that he's got a lot of size. I mean, and he runs just maybe a tick under a 4.4. He's got some pretty decent speed. He's got really, really good body control. Frankly, maybe to say it at this point in their careers, he's basically what Denzel Mims probably should have been, and the impact that he, probably should have had with the New York Jets. I mean, the guy he's got really good body control. He's got really good, ability for catch radius. And I think that specifically for Bo, that will help him, because then at that point, maybe you don't necessarily have to rely on a guy like Courtland Sutton to be your sole 50-50 guy. You can be, pushing the ball down to a guy like an A.T. Perry. And then the other part of it, Matty, is he's a dynamic yak guy, which is something that, the Broncos maybe have been lacking a little bit, with some of those yards after catch, which is obviously led by little Jordan Humphrey. So
I just retweeted his math bomb, his profile there, his relative athletic score. Again, the Broncos, like, Peyton's got a type. I'm talking about George here. He had a RAS score of 9.61, elite composite speed grade. Top end speed is not the high end, 4.47 in the 40, but 2.53 in the 20 and 1.5 in the 10 is highly elite. So he gets off quick, which helps if he's catching the ball and then he's reaccelerating, which helps with that yak. Comparisons to DJ Chark, George Pickens, it's pretty dope. And yeah, Mike, that speaks to his elite route running and his quick twitch, being able to get off the line quickly, get into space and get into the right position, as well as also being able to catch the ball on screens and short plays, short of the sticks, and then be able to run after the catch. So nice little addition. I don't know who that punishes necessarily. Mims already hasn't been getting involved. They've been trying to get Franklin involved more. I don't know if the drop.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The poor throw that Franklin couldn't adjust to in time. I don't know if that punishes him. It's certainly not going to be little big Jordan Humphrey. It ain't gonna be big Jordan, because that dude's been our best
probably
overall.
One.
I mean, at times, yeah. I mean, Sutton's done some things. Obviously, the 60 yards against the Jets were important, but man, that's an interesting pickup. Now, maybe they look to get Mims more involved offensively and pull him from special teams, and maybe that's part of what AT is coming in to do. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas here, but it does seem slightly redundant with Mims and Franklin already on the roster.
Yeah. This is kind of talking a little bit about, I should say, specifically with the wide receiver room, we touched a little bit about, and this is a nice little tie-in to, as we were just having this conversation about where the Broncos can go from here, after this, this game against the Chargers, because there is a window that even if they are 2-1 heading into Baltimore and Kansas City, that they are still buyers at the deadline, and that they are aggressive for a guy like an Evan Ingram, a David Njoku, obviously, right? So like Jeff Bryan mentions, about Evan Ingram. The Jaguars are very interesting. I mean, like, they could be sellers. Obviously, they won their game, but they're going to be a very interesting team. Certainly one of those interesting teams that are going to be worth monitoring. But I have a sneaky, you don't need to trade anyone proposition, though, Matty.
You don't need to trade for anyone proposition?
Yes.
Okay.
They basically convert little Jordan Humphrey as your wide receiver / tight end type. Obviously, we know that he's played a little bit of some inline tight end at times. He's a very willing blocker, We know that. Like, he's a very willing blocker. And they basically use him, on those opportunities where they have, Greg Dulcich necessarily, maybe that chip at the line of scrimmage, or basically holding just a little bit before, he releases, and it's in, a little bit of a tight end screen, if you will, for a guy like a little Jordan Humphrey, because we do know that he has a little bit of some yak ability, as we clearly have seen in the 5 weeks. Is it a long-term fix? Maybe not, but I think that, maybe given with what they can do and maybe makeshift the the roster, I should say, I think it's a very interesting one where maybe they kind of, use him a little bit, and he is your replacement for Greg Dulcich, as a true tweener, if you will.
Man, I don't know. I don't know about that. It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting idea. The way they've used him has been
Like a big slot.
like a big slot. And so
Yeah.
like maybe like a Mike Gesicki type of role for us, I could see to an extent, but playing him like a traditional tight end, I think our running game might suffer. I know he's a willing blocker, but it's it's a different animal when you're doing that against a nickel back, not the band, the position, and
For all the right reasons.
and oh, nicely played. Versus, maybe an off-ball linebacker or something like that, if you're asked, or to set the edge. That's a different ask. There are a couple of tight ends that I'm interested in, and I'm not saying that they're much better at running blocking than what Lil Jordan might be. Hunter Henry is also is also an interesting one, and Jonnu Smith on a Miami team that might be on its way down, and they might be sellers here in a week or two. Jonnu might be a really fun wrinkle to add to this roster.
Yeah, I'm a bit hesitant on Jonnu. I've been a big Jonnu fan at times, like in his career. I just think that, if he was who he was with the Tennessee Titans, funny enough, with Arthur Smith, then, maybe that would very much intrigue me, because I think, at that point in his career, he looked and played very much, kind of like a Delaney Walker, which, the Broncos could use Delaney Walker right now. But I just think that, for what they do need a little bit of some explosiveness out of that tight end position. The Hunter Henry, it's fascinating. I do think that, David Njoku is a very interesting one. Mark Andrews, obviously, is probably one of the more popular ones, for Broncos country. And, I've mentioned it. I'm a bit desperate, obviously, for an offensive playmaker. But, I think that, I do think that the tight end room, as we, kind of circle back, I do think the tight end room is probably the first move they try and address, if they can, at the trade deadline. Because I think that if you were to ask probably my preference, and maybe Matty's preference, I would rather draft that young wide receiver, who is your wide receiver one in the draft, and have him be your wide receiver one. But that said, depending on what you can be able to manipulate and work with draft picks, you might be able to squeeze out an Amari Cooper, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins,
Deontay Johnson
situation, specifically Amari Cooper, though, given the contract, where you might be able to squeeze in Amari Cooper, have him be here, almost like a 1-year rental, and then, and then you decide whether or not you want to keep him, or you want to, have him, maybe Sutton, and then another wide receiver. But I just think that my ideal preference would be your wide receiver one, your young wide receiver one, if you can, coming out of the draft.
So right now we're staring at an Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. That range, if we continue on the path that we think we are, right now, if the draft were to be today, the Broncos would be the 22nd pick, which is pretty ridiculous to think about. If you're talking tight end, still, the Saints have at home against Tampa, at home against us on that Thursday night. They go to the Chargers and to the Panthers. If they don't at least go 2-2 in that stretch, they might be sellers 2 days later in that deadline.
The Saints.
The Saints, yeah. So obviously they have Taysom Hill, but they have Foster Moreau, and they also have Juwan Johnson. Both of those guys could be very hot commodities.
They also have a guy that I'm sure the Broncos will certainly be calling about, but I highly doubt that they, will be moving on from, and that would be Chris Olave.
Yeah, I would actually. This is a hot take. Olave's a great receiver. I'm actually super interested in Rashid Shaheed. If they are sellers and they're interested in moving on from him, so they don't have to pay him the bag, that's an interesting get. And we know there's a relationship there with the Saints. So interesting trade partner for us for sure, especially considering Derek Carr's oblique injury, which we haven't really talked about. They're giving the keys to Spencer Rattler, and I wish him all the best. Next game, potentially going against Baker. I'm not, like whatever. I'm not getting involved in that. He's going to get crushed against the Broncos, but then he's got a couple of winnable games against the Chargers, against the Panthers. But that thing could turn real sour real quick, and maybe they go and recoup some assets. So,
yeah, it's going to be a fun one. All right, Matty, as we're winding down this entire show, you know what's coming. Everybody that's now listeners of the Manely Broncos is coming. Who's been your standout so far? Right now, either freshman or, a college prospect.
Dude, I cannot say anybody but the guy who plays for Boise State, who is leading right now the odds to win the Heisman Trophy. You can't say anybody but Ashton Gianti. Like, the guy is a freaking stud.
Did you see the memes and pictures or whatever?
Oh my God, Michael Myers just standing there
standing there
like a freaking psychopath, and then he gets the ball, not even really running hard, and you still can't get dude down. It's ridiculous at this point. It's like if I was given the lead tailback position and going to play Pop Warner,
yeah.
My gosh. And I'm not saying I'm athletic, but them kids ain't getting this 200 pounds down, 207 pounds down easily. That dude is 5'9", 215 right now, but I think he'll be a little heavher than that probably when
he looks. He certainly looks a bit heavier too, and he's just he's entering Bijan Robinson territory based on running back prospects, just players that you can't. Sometimes it's hard to say, Matty, with running back prospects, but he is a can't miss prospect. That's a running back. It's
interesting though, because he's not involved in the pass game. Of course, when you're averaging a first down every time you run the football, maybe you're not getting a lot of receiving opportunities, 10.9 yards per carry. But that'll be the one thing, maybe that and pass pro, that might knock him down, but he's pretty damn good as a prospect.
Yeah. For me, as I kind of look at this, I am very impressed. Again, I'm going to sound unbelievably biased, but I gotta give a shout out, and that is, I am really, really impressed with the interior of Nebraska's defensive line. They're not getting enough credit, I think, nationally for maybe the job that they're doing. But, former Denver Bronco Terrence Knighton is a heck of a football coach. If you guys have not been following, what has been going on there, he's got those guys balling. And two guys specifically that I would, kind of file away would be, Nash Huntmaker and Ty Robinson. At this point, in the middle part of the season, they are the only team, Matty. They are the only team in NCAA right now that is not allowed a rushing touchdown. And they had 5 downs against Rutgers, against, former NFL head coach Greg Schiano. They had 5 downs basically where they were going up against Rutgers and they didn't allow a single rushing touchdown or touchdown anyway. So, I mean, like, it's unbelievable what they're doing. They've got contributions up and down that, that defensive line. It is super impressive. Everybody talks about the polar bear with the New York Mets, being Pete Alonso, but, Nash Hutmaker is an absolute stud. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's a former wrestler, not a former wrestler, but he's a wrestler with the University of Nebraska. They really do a great job of fluctuating his weight to go between basically, 315 to 325 almost, or 335 sometimes, based on his wrestling weight and everything. So they really do a great job of, really preparing those guys. So, obviously, like I said, I may sound biased on that, but like the fact that we're at the midway point of the season and they do not have a rushing touchdown allowed is just, it's insane. You're
especially in that conference, man. Like that's pretty impressive. We'll see how long that can continue.
It's not one that obviously it's not sustainable, but it's and they got a big game here in 2 weeks. They play Indiana, and then obviously after Indiana is when they play Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting. All right, so now as we wind out this show, Matty, it's at least fitting that we talk about something that is very near and dear to our hearts, and that is
it is fall.
And with the spirit of fall, and everybody that is in the comment section, please feel free to chime in the comment section about how much you absolutely despise candy corn. Please, I really, want to make sure that everybody in the chat basically says, I hate candy corn, because, in this season, Matt, we know that everybody hates candy corn.
It's such a dumb take. It's such a wildly egregious take that you just had. Like, everybody knows that hot dogs are a sandwich, pineapple belongs on pizza, and candy corn is the elite treat of the fall. Everybody knows it. Keep your damn pumpkin spice lattes and all that, wearing your Uggs and your crossbodies and drinking out of your Stanleys. I have a Stanley, but it's like a work Stanley. Like, I drink my coffee out of that Stanley. Like, you keep all that. Give me my candy corn. Give me my autumn mix. Like, let's freaking go. Brock's, it is officially the season when I bust open my first bag of Brock's. Now, it's going to be freaking 70s, 80s for the rest of this week. But next week, I'm going to be chomping down on some candy corn because we're going to be in the 70s. Hell yeah. There you go, Noah. Let's go.
See, I just can't. And and maybe it's me.
It's always you. It's always you.
Maybe it's me. But the overall image of what you have with your dad, my dad, obviously, my dad putting candy corn in yogurt, like that just goes to show you how much he really likes candy corn. And myself, I'm just completely, scarred from this opportunity. But I will say I don't like chalk. I don't like eating chalk. And that is why candy corn is basically chalk. And it just doesn't, there's no taste. And it doesn't move me at all. And like I mean,
you don't taste honey?
Nope.
In candy corn?
Nope.
Bruh.
I don't.
That's a you problem.
It tastes like trash.
Tastes like plastic snot. The snozberries taste like snozberries. Give me all of that then. Give me all of that. Yes, sir. Candy freaking corn. Let's go.
But nonetheless, fall is the best season. It is the greatest season. It is the pumpkin spice season. I know Ryan Edwards would agree. Yeah, or I should say it's also pumpkin spice latte season as well, or so Ryan Edwards would agree.
To keep with the season, because happy Prime Day, everybody. Thanks, Noah. It's nice to have support. Getting ganged up on here. So, with the season, I purchased a Ninja Cafe Luxe espresso maker. So, very, very excited to get that here in a week and a half, and it's going to be game on. It's going to be all the lattes here, though, for real.
What is your favorite fall thing? Like as far as like
Wearing hoodies next to a bonfire, like that's and sipping bourbon, like. And if I can have a TV somewhere where I'm able to watch football, like it doesn't get much better than that. That's
I feel like that's
pretty elite.
I feel like that's probably like me is like, and I guess when you're so into sports, like when you have a hoodie, you have your sliding, door open, and you're either sitting on a patio, or you're sitting in your family room, and you're just watching, either Thursday night football, or you're watching basically, game. I should say, you're watching football basically from Thursday all the way to, Sunday. I mean, like life's basically great, and unfortunately, I will say, like, with Colorado, it's like, your the weather's not exactly ideal right now. It's been in like the, what is it, the 70s and almost 80s right now. So it's just, it's not ideal.
Picture this. You wake up, it's a day off. You go to your garage, you lift the door. As the door's humming, you turn on your Blackstone.
Mm-hmm.
You're wearing pajama bottoms and a hoodie and drinking hot coffee. Your Blackstone gets up to temperature, and you are greeted to the sound of bacon sizzling and dancing on your Blackstone while you can still see your breath.
This has been Matty Mulls' ASMR.
And College Game Day's on in the background. And life is good. Like Saturdays in the fall are just, they're so elite. There's nothing else like it during the rest of the year. It's my favorite.
You should include in there humidity as well, Jeff. You should include humidity in there as well. It's the best. I mean, like, there's a reason why, and as we said, like we absolutely love fall, and it's also, as we said, it's great. I mean, football is always, the greatest in terms of the season with fall, but also, Matty, it's not just the fact that it's football season. I mean, you got the Avs getting ready to start up. You got actually, I think they started up tonight. You got the Nuggets and basketball season get ready to, start up. You have, Oklahoma City Thunder, and, you're getting ready to do, some content, obviously not just here at Manely Broncos, but of course, with your Topic Thunder pod, not Tropic Thunder, even though that is one of the greatest comedies of all time.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, so it's exciting, like everything all at once. I mean, so if it all goes, south for the winter in terms of this Broncos season, we know the Avs and Nuggets got us, man. We know the Avs and Nuggets got us.
And so does Elijah Craig and Jack Daniels. Like they got me too. Not so much with the Johnny Walker. I drink different stuff. But yeah, like it's pretty dope time of year when you got all these sporting events just kind of going on at one time. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Want to thank everybody for hopping into the chat. It has been an absolutely fantastic episode to Mike and Jeff, Brian. Thank you for hopping in. Obviously, Graham was in here a little bit earlier.
Yes, sir.
Thank you to Graham. Obviously, Josh had his only like one lone comment, but hey, thanks for chiming in and being
and Moose River with the question of the night.
And Moose River Hummer with the question of the night. So thank you guys to everybody that was in here. It's been a fantastic show. Make sure you guys
North Cup Productions too. Thank you.
Yes, of course. make sure you guys watch another episode of the Manly Broncos podcast come next week, because it's going to be probably the preview show, if you will, before we have the Saints game on a Thursday night. And we're probably going to see, I'll ask Mike, but we might do something a little bit differently, where instead of one show, we have two shows. And why are we going to end up doing two shows? Well, because we'll see if we can be able to do a recap episode of Manly on that Friday, after the Thursday night game. But this has been an absolute blast. Again, make sure you follow both Matty and myself over there on X, on Twitter at Matty Mulls Pod. Follow myself at Cameron Parker PO, the show handle at Manly Broncos. Obviously, Brandon Miller chose to not appear tonight due to he just didn't want to be here. But he'll be back next week. Again, thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute blast, and we will see you guys next week.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.